Cool. I'll just jump in, just some tech notes as well. If folks could just make sure, if they're not already, but it seems that everybody is, as far as I can tell, on mute, just while the presentation's happening, because there'll be time for questions later. You'll be able to see the chat as well. And I do believe there may be closed captions as well occurring. Maybe not. Sorry, that is not happening as far as I can tell. But yeah, you'll just be able to see along the bottom as well. There's a hand gesture, and in there you can use that for the Q&A to raise your hand, but also there's options in there to give the thumbs up and the like as well. So yeah, just make sure to have your cameras muted for the presentation and all good.
Great. Hey, Nick, did you want to take us off maybe?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. My name's Nick. I'm from the Community Union Defence League. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly acknowledge the traditional owners of the continent that we live on, and in particular the Yuggah and Turrbal people on whose land I live and speaking to you from at the moment. I'd like to acknowledge the elders past and present, and in particular call upon us all to reflect and strive for justice for the First Nations people of this continent in whatever version of a better world we find ourselves fighting for. So as I said, my name is Nick. I'm from the Community Union Defence League. We are an organisation that's been around for just shy of a decade in some form or another at this point. And, we started back in response to, tell us if sounding familiar, attacks upon the CFMEU back in 2016. And we started off with doing picket support and, providing food and groceries for workers who were going without pay while they were out on strike as well. And we kind of, from this start in the trade union movement, we have kind of formed out into a mass organization, very inspired by the work of the Black Panthers. Obviously, those elders over there in America, and I guess our approach is to try and apply those tenets of unionism found in the trade union movement to a community context. So things like collective action and solidarity. We've been running a street kitchen down at Musgrave Park in West End here in Meanjin, for about 2.5 years now, I've just realized. We are starting up there alongside a group called Orange Sky, who do laundry services every Sunday there. And yeah, we've been there for 2.5 years, and kind of it started off as very simple, like a sausage sizzle in the park, and kind of at this point now we do over 100 meals each week, all sourced from the community, and as well as groceries and sundry items. And I just want to emphasize that while we definitely started as a response to the increased amount of off sleepers here in this city, we have at this point it's very much a community affair. It is we have community members of all sorts come down and hang out, eat some food, catch up with mates. I'll hand over to Caspian to talk a little bit about the APN.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Caspian. I'm from the Anti-Poverty Network Queensland. We've also been around just shy of 10 years now. We started out also might sound familiar, in response to the council moving on rough sleepers from under the bridge in South Brisbane. And we came together as a mutual aid focused and network building focused organisation of people in poverty, for people in poverty, to try and make some good in the world. Thank you, Nick, for introducing us a little bit to Cuddle and about the work that we've been doing in Musgrave Park. So we started, APN started in Musgrave Park in, starting that sentence again, following in the footsteps of Cuddle, we started out by supporting the Cuddle kitchens, and eventually we've branched out into running our own kitchens in Musgrave Park as well. And I think that there's a real story there about the power of relationship, not just between people, but between organisations. So much of the work that Cuddle and APN has done in the last couple of years has only been possible because of our collaborative relationship. And it's been a real lesson in how working together can achieve great things. So we've pulled together today to talk a little bit about how to run a street kitchen, because it's something that we get asked a lot. And it's really not that complicated. So we thought people might appreciate getting the chance to hear from us and ask us questions, and we can share some of the insights that we've developed over the years, just from on the ground experience, and pass it on to you all. I just realized I forgot to move over the slides. This is who we are. This is our logos. So when it comes to Cuddle and APM both, a lot of the driving philosophy behind our work is the idea of mutual aid. So we thought we'd start off by doing a quick look into what mutual aid is and why to do it. So mutual aid is kind of what it says on the tin. It's when people in an area or a community come together to support one another and collectively meet each other's needs. Notably without the support of more official bodies like state or NGOs. Mutual aid often arises in response to government neglect of a particular community of people, or in response to crisis. So thinking about like the efforts that pop up after floods or fires, or the organic networks of care that popped up during the times of COVID. And something that's really important to us, I think, about this idea of mutual aid as well, is that it's unlike charity, which is often paternalistic, conditional, and hierarchical. Mutual aid is based on solidarity, reciprocity, connection to place and community, and empowerment. It's about communities building what we need to look after ourselves, rather than being dependent or beholden to conditional or hierarchical institutions in order to meet our needs. Yeah, and then having spoken about like what mutual aid is, I guess the question then is, why mutual aid? And I wanted to actually read a passage to you all today. I was at the Free University Radical Group the other week, which is another great community initiative that I'd highly recommend people get connected to. And we were reading the book, Joyful Militancy. And this particular paragraph stuck out to me, and it's a bit wordy, so I'm going to read it out loud as well. But this is a segment of Joyful Militancy by Carl Bergman and Nick Montgomery. When people find themselves genuinely supported and cared for, they are able to extend this to others in ways that seemed impossible or terrifying before. When people find their bellies filled and their minds sharpened among communal kitchens and libraries, hatred for capitalist ways of life grows amid belonging and connection. When someone receives comfort and support from friends, they find themselves willing to confront the abuse that they have been facing. When people develop or recover a connection to the places where they live, they may find themselves standing in front of bulldozers to protect that place. When people begin to meet their everyday needs through community assemblies and mutual aid, all of a sudden they are willing to fight the police, and the fight deepens bonds of trust and solidarity. Joy can be contagious and dangerous, which I just think is a beautiful passage, and I think really highlights the transformative potential at the heart of mutual aid, because we know that like when our communities look after each other, we are so much more capable of taking the proactive fight for ourselves and for our communities and for justice. So I think we recognize that by looking after our needs collectively, there's a lot of power in that. Cool. And so without further ado then, let's get into the practical stuff and what it actually takes to run a street kitchen. So I thought we'd break it down into a couple of different segments for this. We've prepared some information on materials, food, processes, and logistics. So these are like really the pragmatic elements of running a street kitchen. And all of this information that we're talking about is also going to be prepared in like a little booklet that we'll be sending along to anyone who attended as well. So don't worry if you can't get all of this down, as well as the recording, of course. But yeah, let's go into materials. Nick, did you want to help me go through some of these materials?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you see, we kind of have, first of all, like definite props to Caspian for the layout of this. I think it's a very good way of, I guess, communicating the information that we are trying to communicate. As you can see here, we kind of have it split into like your one-off costs and needs and your ongoing ones, and kind of your things that you are definitely going to need and things that are nice to have. So yeah, kind of as you'll see as we kind of go on, we also have it scaled to various different sizes of like, depending on, your capacity, how many people you have, all that sort of stuff. As I said at the start, kind of, we started off with, frankly, a table, a gas burner, and like a frying pan. And obviously it looks very different today. So yeah, the things you're definitely going to need are folding tables, some way to heat water or keep water hot. We've always just used a kettle on a burner, or more recently a electric kettle on like a little battery generator. Some sort of storage, easy storage for the thing. We found that you did like one or two kind of the like clear see-through tubs with little wheels is usually enough. And the other one that this one's probably not necessarily a must-have, but like is definitely a highly recommended. Is like you're probably going to need someone with a car or vehicle. Just whether it's getting the stuff there, convening in one place, it can be hard to carry around several tables or whatever. So yeah, that's definitely I would consider it a must-have. Obviously, then you're going to need, the things like if you're using reusable stuff, you're going to need to outlay the cost for that or source them. You can get them pretty cheaply, often from like secondhand and op shop. They'll have like a whole set for like $10-15. Just need a couple of those usually. And then kind of ongoing is usually it's mostly like the food, but it's also if you were using not non-reusable stuff like disposable things like cups, cutlery, and all that sort of stuff. But otherwise, yeah, you're going to need things like, I mean, as you see there, tea, coffee, juice, cordial, milk, bread, depending on what you're doing, that all that sort of stuff. The food in general is obviously, I think we'll cover a bit more later, but those are kind of the things to get started and things that you're definitely going to need. Then from there, some of the early things we're adding are like a place to sit and eat. So you're not just giving the food and then kind of people leaving or whatever. That's just, I think these are very important for creating the like community aspect of it. You want people like sitting down, chatting to each other over a meal. And then you can add lights, charging stations for people's phones. We found this especially useful in Musgrave Park as a part of the continuing attacks upon the homeless people here in this city. Currently, there is no power in the park, so we started bringing along charging stations so people can keep their phones charged, that sort of stuff. And then first aid kit and a trolley is just good to get stuff around in. And then then kind of the other ongoing nice to haves. Frankly, the sky's the limit here. These are mostly just examples of things that either APN or Cuddle do, but we want to emphasize that, like, really, it can look like whatever you want it to look like. But yeah, we have a lot of like hygiene supplies and health supply, lots of clothing and bedding, a lot of bedding as well, and tents. A tent's nice, but you don't want to be lying on the ground still. There's lots of clothes, snacks and stuff for them to be able to have later. Obviously, your probably only going to be there for a few hours, and they're going to continue being there. So it's something that they can kind of like keep them going for a bit, or they can use when they want. And then, yeah, as it has here, kind of posters and flyers, usually for like, we do, what we done, actually, we need to redo because it's been taken down recently. We put up like a community like notice board nearby, and we would write up all sorts of information on there, like, you know, things that are upcoming in events upcoming in the park, all that sort of stuff. Just kind of keep the people living in the park, I guess, abreast of things. This is like mostly useful for us around a particular festival, called the Povertyahead Festival, which we may or may not go into a bit, but is definitely a lot of our like defense work. It's kind of been born out of that. But yeah, that's kind of the, at least like the very early on, like the stuff to think about, like what you're going to need to get started. Yeah, I'll hand back to you, Catherine.
Yeah, and a lot of this stuff, particularly like the one-off stuff, just another thing that I'd suggest is to look into donations. A lot of like local buy nothing groups, or just asking around. These are things that you'll need to find to start with, but you won't necessarily have to buy all of them. Yeah, cool. But moving on from there, I think you started to touch on this, but we've gotten a little bit more specific into it, is the food. So when it comes to food, there is a million options. And for you/your group, it'll come down to your specific capacity and context. But we thought we'd list off some of like the most common options for food, just to like give you a bit of insight onto where you can start sourcing things. And I've popped them onto this really fuzzy effort scale, kind of starting down the bottom with bakeries, because bakeries are your lowest hanging fruit. They are always desperate to give some stuff away. So if you are looking to start off a street kitchen, well, I think we'll get into this later on as well, but like starting small is something that we'd recommend. Like it's better to be consistent and small, and then let yourself grow naturally than get really bogged down in having all of the things and then not being able to do that reliably. But if you start even just with like some tea and coffee, all it takes to scale that up into a kitchen is hitting up a bakery for some leftover bread, and then you've got food, and your street kitchen journey has begun. But scaling up from bakeries, another low-hanging fruit is like sausages and burgers. Like Nick mentioned with Cuddle, like they just started off with a sausage sizzle. There's like, a meal doesn't need to be complicated. Nutrients are nutrients at the end of the day. And a tip that we give is that butchers are often giving away or have old stock that they need to get rid of. And they'll usually do this on a schedule. And we found that butchers can be pretty friendly to donating that leftover meat, if just asked. So we definitely recommend getting in touch with butchers in your local area. Jumping up the scale of effort, the next thing on the line, and probably the most common form of food that we've got at our street kitchens, is donated pre-prepared meals. They're a little bit more effort to coordinate, but I would generally say worth it. Your donated meals, like they can come from cafes or restaurants, they can come from community groups or individuals within the community that are happy to cook. You might have places that have consistent excess catering. So lots of options to look at for pre-prepared meals. If you're going down the path of donated meals, note that will require coordinating rostering, transport, and safe food storage, which we'll go into a little bit more later on. But those are just some of the practical considerations to keep in mind. But I'd find that donated meals are kind of great because they allow you to engage the most amount of people in helping out and spread the work around, because sustainability is kind of the aim of the game with any political project, but with street kitchens in particular. And finding ways to make it a little bit of effort for a lot of people, will go a long way towards making your street kitchens sustainable. And then kind of at the end, we thought we'll have to mention this as well. At the end of the effort scale is cooking the food yourself. So this can be high effort, especially ongoing, if you don't have the numbers to spread that work around. But if you can pull it off, like the donated meals, like a home cooked meal is always worth it if you have the capacity. And we found that cooking together, like coming together to cook with your community, can be a really nourishing and rewarding experience, and that there are really important relationships have been built with us at Cuddle, not at Cuddle, us at APN and Cuddle, through just coming together regularly to cook meals together. So wanted to make note of that as well. And when it comes to self-cooked meals, in terms of finding produce, just some tips that we've had is that one, a lot of particularly independent grocers will be looking to like get rid of old stock, similar to butchers. Go and ask. They will often get give you produce for free. That's what we used to do at APN. You can also hit up community gardens and neighbours that grow food, neighbours and friends. Another source of produce. There's always dumpsters as well. And when it comes to dumpsters, we will say just dumpster dive responsibly and safely, and be very sure to be particularly careful about food safety and contamination, because it's not mutual aid everyone food poisoning. Cool. And that's kind of it on food. And so we can move on then to some of our processes. Because beyond the like tangible stuff you'll need to start up a street kitchen, there's also some of the process stuff that we've learned over the time doing our work at APN and Cuddle that really make the work just go a lot smoother and can minimize risk of burnout or overwork. So there's a lot of this process work can be done remotely as well, which is great because you might have people who want to help out but can't be there reliably on the ground. And this process work is just as much as an important part of the street kitchen's functioning as the on-the-ground work, and can be done kind of remotely or to your own schedule, which is nice. There are a lot of processes you could implement in a street kitchen to streamline your work. We thought we'd go into like 3 of the top line ones, which are rostering, contacting, and promotions. So I might hand it over, Nick, if you want to talk us through rostering a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So at Cuddle, we have members kind of strewn across Queensland broadly, and they people that I largely took over organizing the street kitchens from now don't live in the city, so a way that they've been able to remain kind of engaged as instead of a lot of this work being done remotely is through like rostering and organizing all that. We keep it pretty simple. We have like a spreadsheet of people who can contact us. This kind of ties into promotions a bit, but yeah, an easy way to be contacted. People can contact you. We run a fortnightly roster, so I guess more like a week A, week B roster. So when people contact us, we kind of ask which one they want to sign up for. They're free to sign up for both. We do have a method as well for like monthly participation, but we try and keep it on the week A, week B just for ease and consistency. And yeah, so we just run it off a spreadsheet and a calendar app. This is all kind of run through like the just on whoever's involved in rostering. It can be kept online. Obviously, one thing to do with this is always keep in mind kind of cybersecurity in general. Like, people make sure people are okay with their names being stored in certain ways, all that sort of stuff. But other than that, it's just about gathering information from people, setting up a roster and whatever works for you. I said we use like on week, off week roster, and then on the day and leading up to the day, kind of checking in and making sure people are like, you know, they're still there. You know, they haven't forgotten. Something hasn't come up and they haven't let you know yet. Yeah, this is. I'll be frank. This is probably one of the harder bits of as far as processes go. Like the process itself is pretty easy, but you will depending on how you kind of go about it, you will have people. Obviously, people's capacity changes a lot, and it can be difficult to, I guess, adjust to on the fly. So that's definitely a thing to keep in mind. Is as Catherine kind of mentioned, definitely sustainability and consistency is such a huge part of the success of these things. So yeah, definitely feel free to like kind of change things as they need to be changed. But yeah, that's at least the process. It's pretty straightforward. Just a roster, calendar, list of volunteers, calendar, and some sort of either someone just text from their phone, or there's like several like online text services you can use to just make sure that like kind of everyone's on the same page, everyone knows what's going on, when it's going on. Obviously, these can kind of slightly change depending on like the role, whether you have people, you know, running the kitchen itself, whether they're cooking or need meals picked up, or whether they're picking meals up. Even like some at Cuddle down in Sydney, they have, and I think in Melbourne as well, they have people who specifically like their job is to go pick up meals from people cooking it and drop it off. Yeah, I guess that's kind of that.
Thank you. Cool. And another process that Nick kind of touched on as well, and because they are so overlapping, is the contacting. Running a street kitchen means a lot of contacting people. You got to contact people to be on shifts. You got to contact people to donate supplies. You got to contact people to promote your kitchens. If you have the capacity, having a group of people just on contacting can be really helpful. On the contacting, just some like practical tips is that like we found that writing template letters for donation requests early on means that you're not reinventing the wheel every time. You're also welcome to reach out to us at APN or Cuddle, and we can share our templates with you too, to spread the work around. This is something that Nick mentioned as well, but having a list of contacts for people interested in volunteering really streamlines the contacting and rostering process. And it means that you're going to be less likely to be scrambling for volunteers at the last minute. It's also a good centralized place to put down people who express interest in helping you out, because you're probably going to get a bunch of those. And having a preset place to put that information and contact those people from, if you've got that set up from the get-go, can be really helpful, because then you're not chasing up data in a million places. And I guess another tip along with that is to keep a sign-up sheet and a pen as part of your stalls. And yeah, figure out where to put that information and how to get it there. So spreadsheets are helpful. Cool. And then the last process that we wanted to dive into today was promo. Promo has the potential to be a bigger job than you imagine. So having processes around it can be quite helpful. If you're going to go down the path of setting up a social media presence, you'll want to be regularly taking photos and making graphics, as well as writing content to post. And even if you don't have socials that you set up, things like having posters that you've designed put up in places around where your stalls are going to be, and flyers to keep on hand are really helpful as well. And as with the donation letters, recommend some template text for your social posts and setting up a graphics template pretty early on, because like your posts don't need to be a perfectly unique work of creative genius every time. They just need to get the info out, and the info is probably going to be pretty similar from week to week. Cool. Going on then to some of our logistics. And after we've spoken about logistics, we'll dive into how to get started. But yeah, Nick, did you want to talk through some of these logistical questions?
Yeah, for sure. So Yeah, it's mostly, as you say, it's mostly kind of storage and how you get things around. There are, again, a million different ways. The sky's the limit here, but to give some examples of ways we do it, we've done it a few different ways over the kind of course. Cuddle one, for things like uh, tea and coffee, that's pretty easy. They usually come in jars, that sort of stuff. Other than that, you can't, obviously you don't want them to be out like in, probably don't keep the whole thing outside entirely. Especially with if you're using like long life milk and stuff, like keep it as you would keep it normally. But yeah, with the store materials itself, there's again like we use a couple of tubs, just like I don't I don't know how liters work, but the ones with like the little wheels on them, a couple of those. It depends on what it is you have, whether it's a lot of like little loose items in case, something like bags and that sort of stuff as well. The what you really want to think about mostly is kind of where you are going to keep it. If you're going to keep it at a community hall nearby, if you're going to keep it at someone's house, if you're going to like kind of everyone has a little bit of stuff and then it all comes together. Uh, Obviously, again, there's a million of ways to do this as well. I think ideally you would have it kept at a neutral location near the um, near the kitchen itself. This way, you're not reliant on a certain person attending or being there to have stuff picked up. Or this can be a little hard though, but a lot of community groups around have you're not going to use a lot of space, so a lot of them kind of have a corner you can keep stuff in, that sort of thing. Transport is obviously very dependent on where it is, but this is kind of where I mentioned at the start that realistically you're probably going to need a car. Even for a smallish kitchen, you've got a table, the food, a cooker, maybe a tub of a few other things, a few bags. So it's going to take at least a few people if you're going to carry it yourself. So we really do recommend a vehicle of some sort, if possible. But yeah, other than that, kind of transport of food, if you have people doing dedicated driving, I guess kind of back on what's a little like, you want to make sure that they are there on time, with either get like styrofoam containers to keep like containers warm. We have found you can get like a lot of the little plastic containers pretty cheap and supply those to cooks if they need them, or a lot of people are usually happy to provide them themselves. But yeah, a styrofoam container to keep them warm, or a cool bag to keep stuff cool, depending on what it is. But yeah, you definitely want to keep that food safety in mind, especially if you're traveling, even 30, 40 minutes with like a box of hot food. Yeah. And I'm back, Astrid.
Yeah, cool. Well, then from here, we can jump into how to get started, which I guess is like the question of the hour. So there's a lot of steps to getting started that we could cover. So we thought we'd hone in on like some particular ones, starting with finding a space, because that's really going to be the heart of your kitchen, is where you are, and what community you're a part of and how you're turning up there. Nick, did you want to talk us through maybe Cuddle's experience of finding a space as an example to get us going?
Sure. So for the longest time, Cuddle kind of set up at a park near the CBD of Meanjin called Emma Miller Place. There were a number of rough sleepers there, but it was also like in the CBD, like a block from King George Square. So there was a lot of, I guess, just people who were after a feed or whatever. And so we were there for some time, kind of on and off, and then kind of it was at this point where like, oh well, like we want to be like making sure that we're like getting the most effect more than anything. We want to be where people are, and the thought we had was that like as I mentioned at the start, we set up alongside a group called Orange Sky, who do like a laundry service and stuff 7 days a week at Musgrave. So yeah, we're like, oh, like, you know, people are already going to be there for that, you know, and they're going to be there hanging around for an amount of time. And also at this point, there had started being a harsh like upswing in the amount of people who are sleeping. It was not at the start of the housing crisis, but definitely at one of the points where it started really intensifying. When we started going to Musgrave Park, there were about 30, so there were about 20 tents there at the time, but they were all from nearby. So this kind of gave us the chance to engage with them pretty directly, and yeah, I guess the definitely thing to take away is like think about where there are people in need. If it is near other things like public transport, obviously for those of you who don't live in Meanjin, like Musgrave Park is like a couple blocks from like the most tourist place in the city, South Bank. So it has like public transport everywhere. So this is it's enabled a lot of like volunteers to get there very easily. People coming from like other parts of the city could, at least here, there's like the homeless community kind of really moves around a lot, especially in the more central parts of the city. So yeah, we definitely consider like the location, the community itself, like what your connection is to it. If any, you don't necessarily usually want something because you need like I guess on the community connection thing, if you are at the point where you have an idea of, you know, the people who are there, their needs and that sort of stuff, like that's enough of a community connection. You have already begun the beautiful journey of community connection at that point. So yeah, that's kind of our experience. Definitely, if there's one thing I would take away from this, definitely don't be afraid to change space if you're finding it's not working, or it, you know, for any number of reasons, whether it's like you're having you know, varying wildly amount of food, if it's not, if you don't, as I said, for any number of reasons, whether it's yeah, like there's not enough people, it's hard to get to, anything like that, yeah, definitely feel free to like change until you find the right spot, because it can be a hard thing to kind of balance up, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think the not being willing to move around, not being unwilling to move around is some good advice, but also kind of tempered with the consistency of giving it a crack.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because often you'll find that you need time for things to kind of percolate out through networks of word of mouth before you start seeing like regular, consistent numbers. But you'll be able to tell from the experience you're having which one of those is happening probably. And you can always try new things. And that was something that worked. I think one thing I'll pull out from your story, Nick, as well, is the being able to tap onto things that are already happening where people already are. Because that was what worked for us at APN Queensland, was coming initially to start Cuddle with their kitchens on their day. And we were able to scale up into running a whole separate kitchen on another day. And it did initially start out slow while the word of mouth took a while to get out. And then eventually we've got like quite a consistent and regular group of people who are coming to eat food with us. Yeah. I'll move on to the next part of starting up, which I kind of just started touching on, which was the relationships with other mutual aid groups. So at APN, like I said, we were able to start off because we tapped onto the Cuddle kitchens. First by going to help out at the Cuddle kitchens and sending our members that way. And then when we started, got roughly how many people do we have coming along? Fluctuates, at least 20 to 30 people on APN nights, and probably more on Cuddle nights because they've got other services coming along as well. Yeah. But yeah, relationships with mutual aid groups are absolutely huge. once we were doing our own kitchens, we were still using the cuddle kit.
I think Caspian may have dropped out, but I think we'll just give them a minute to come back. Unfortunately,
Hey.
this does. Hello?
I'm back.
Oh, you're back. There you go.
Sorry. But would encourage anyone to build relationships with us as well. If you're locally based in Meanjin, we at APN and Cuddle are really keen to help out other street kitchens get started, and we can help with access to like materials and resources, and hot tips for where to get supplies. So yeah, that is that point, which kind of I don't need to labor. And then consistency, which is another point that I think we really wanted to drive home, is that it will be your consistent presence that really makes a difference in your community, we found, with street kitchens. Particularly for us at APN, and I know at Cuddle, like we make to make sure that we're there on public holidays and the days that a lot of like services might cancel, or like charities might cancel, because people don't stop being hungry just because it's a public holiday. And that's made a huge difference to our relationship with the community. But also just to get started, that consistency is what means that people will be turning up. Because for a lot of people who are going to be using your kitchens, they may not be using social media or have consistent access to social media or other channels for keeping track of your work. But if they know from experience that there's someone going to be in that physical place at that specific time, they'll be turning up anyway, and they'll spread the word to others to turn up. And that word of mouth is how you're going to get probably most of your traffic, if you're in a situation at all similar to what we've got in Musgrave Park. So yeah, really wanted to kind of note the importance of consistency when you're thinking about starting up. And yeah, the starting small but regularly, and letting yourselves grow naturally. Like even if all you've got is a couple thermoses of hot water, some tea bags, some cups, and you're turning up once a week with like a hot beverage, that's something. And that's consistency. Like it's not that much work to have some hot beverages with people once a week. But if you're doing that, if you can get to the point of doing that once a week, it's a lot easier to then maybe reach out to a bakery and suddenly you've got hot beverages and baked goods. And that's only more step. Or you could take one more step and reach out to a butcher and get some sausages. And you've already got contacts with the bakery, so you've already got bread, and you've got tea and coffee. And with little steps like this, your street kitchen can grow. Yeah. Wanted to think a little bit about options at different capacities as well. And I reckon I'll say a little bit, and Nick, if you want to jump in and say anything as well. But if you're thinking about the group that you want to start with, or the people that you know who you might want to get a street kitchen going with, different things will be possible at different scales of people. Obviously, there's no hard or fast rules because it's really going to depend what your specific people are and what their specific capacities are. But a regular tea stall with some baked goods for 3 people might not be that hard. The tea and coffee and everything is shelf stable. It's really just the milk that you need to stock up, and the cups. And you can reach out to a couple of people or a couple of businesses to try and get some things supplied. And it's not too much. We wouldn't recommend going less than 3 people because people need to take breaks, and also just having we find that having at least 3 people on a stall is good, because it means that if someone needs to go to the bathroom, for example, no one's left alone. Once you get to 5 people, you can start like thinking about things more like rostering and some of those processes that we were talking about. And then once you get to 10 people, then you can really start pulling out a lot of the nice to haves off of the list from earlier before. That maybe would not be as possible with a small group of people. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah, you go, Nick.
the main thing I would add is that like it's also it is a learned skill. Like you will be able to do more stuff as you do it more. You'll kind of figure out what doesn't work. Like the things you need to put a lot of effort into, things you don't need to put as much effort into. And I guess the thing I would say is that like on any given night, you even at like in Cuddle's example, for example, we do like 100 meals a night over a couple of hours for about 50 to 60 plus people with other stuff. And usually we have about 5 or 6 people running the stall. So like, yeah, once you're kind of getting to a good number, like really, so yeah, start looking at, like I said, like the rostering, like the week A, week B, whatever it might be. Or I guess, and I think we're talking about a bit like, like the other sort of things you can start doing, like with mutual aid, like as I was talking about it a bit, but we've started doing like advocacy for the people living in the park, all sort of stuff, and you'll find that this kind of happens as well. A lot of people who are in really rough spots are used to a very specific kind of model, which is charity. They are used to people kind of asking something of them. So yeah, don't be too shocked when that happens. The amount of times I've been asked which church I'm from is countless. Yeah.
Cool. Well then, I put this slide in case Nick or I or anyone had any other practical tips or tricks and other advice to offer. Do you have anything else that you wanted to share, Nick?
I guess like the main thing I would say is when I first started getting involved in, I guess, community organizing broadly, one of the first like tips I was given was a thing called community mapping, which is like take the time to like, look up what else is in the area, find out who's doing food services, what businesses there are that you might be able to hit up. Like a little bit of planning beforehand will give you like a good method of, I guess, like having an idea of what might be possible. And then once you kind of have these other organizations or groups or businesses or charities, whatever, churches, etc., just give them a call or go in, have a chat, tell them a bit about what you're doing, like trade phone numbers. So much of this work is community and it is communal work. It's about like, having the right phone number at the right time to make the right thing happen. So yeah, like I guess, yeah, I know. That's like kind of like, shoot me a message. I'm happy to go on to, I guess, community mapping. But yeah, like really take that time to, I guess, have a look at and think about what else is in your area and what you can tap into before diving in.
Yeah, such important advice. That's huge. And yeah, I don't think I have much more to cover. So I guess we can get into, the existing networks that you can tap into. So between us at APN and Cuddle, we've been putting together the Meanjin Mutual Aid Network, which we're hoping to be a network of mutual aid orgs in Meanjin, where we can connect and share resources and spread the work around. So yeah, I guess this was just an opportunity to give a bit of a plug for that and to encourage people to get in touch with us at APN or Cuddle if you want to be involved in something like that. And especially if you're looking to start up a street kitchen, we would love to chat. We would love to help you out, because the more of these there are, the better. And we have a lot of knowledge and pre-done work that we have no intention of hoarding. So yeah, we'd love to share it with you. And then I guess that's us in terms of the structured stuff. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll open it up for questions and discussion. Yeah, so if you want to type in the chat or put up your hand, we've got some moderators who'll be happy to hand out. Kristen.
I know it's always hard to get the first person to ask, and I've got a few questions, but I won't give you all of them. There was two things I was wondering. One is if you guys could talk a little bit about what things like Povertyahead mean for people, because obviously in community spaces all across the continent where folks are sleeping, like our local governments and our state governments put events on, but often we don't think about or see the impact for people who are usually using those spaces. And maybe this is like not one for today, but also I was just wondering if you would have any opportunities or resources to share about dealing with any tricky situations that might come up while you're doing the stall.
Nick, did you want to take a question about Povertyahead?
Yeah. So Povertyahead is, I guess, frankly, it's a bit of a shit fight every year. It has gotten easier each year. It's gotten a bit better. Due to the fact that we keep having the same fight. But basically, for those who don't know what Povertyahead is the Povertyahead Greek Festival. It is a long-standing like cornerstone here in the city. It has been going for, I think, about 50 years. And it is organized by the Greek community, specifically the Greek Orthodox Church, and the Greek Club, which are situated across the road from Musgrave Park. They in the past, it has been like a free entry event. People can come and go. It's like a big cultural event. The park was very good. A handful of years ago, they started charging tickets, and with tickets come fences. So what has happened is they now have like a plan each year that they submit for like where the fence is all going to go up. And obviously here at like Musgrave Park, people are sleeping all across the park, not just in one place. So there's a lot of I guess people being displaced by this. The first time round, it was pretty brutal. There were like cops coming in and like other services kind of coming in, getting rid of and throwing away people's belongings. And obviously these people don't have a lot of belongings often to begin with. Especially the first time around, a lot of people were like international students who had found themselves homeless with rising rents just off the back of COVID. So there are a lot of people who, didn't necessarily even have English as their first language. So it was really, really hard, and it kind of ended in a bit of a standoff, which ended with them kind of finally cordoning off part of the park to be where the few tents that remain could be. Because one of the things that we got out of the first one is that like we were able to coordinate a much better response the second time, and we are currently in like the midst of organizing for this one. It is coming up in a few weeks, so we have found ourselves again back, but this time like there's a lot more. We've gotten better at engaging kind of with our Department of Housing to get people temporary housing where they want to. Obviously, the role we play in a lot of it is advocating for what people want. Some people don't want to go into temporary housing. They prefer living in the park for one reason or another. Obviously, a lot of these temporary housing can be, frankly, pretty rough. They cost a fair bit of money. They are usually poorly kept in, and there are a lot of people kind of like crammed into what is effectively like a hotel or a hostel. often people with like complex issues that aren't resolved because they've slipped through the various cracks existing in the state. So yeah, kind of. We're waiting to see what's going to look like this year, but yeah, at this point, it is a lot of organization between us here at Cuddle at APN. We have a good relationship with the local council of the Gabba Ward, Trina Massey. Long live Trina, long may she reign. And yeah, so with that and kind of a bit of being able to like, pull in these more, I guess, like institutional forces like one of two cool counselors and other like groups like Micah and the Department of Housing. We've been able to get the majority of people housed that want to be housed throughout the festival itself, and then the people who are left in the park, they are given a space where they can set up their tents. Often they'll have to move to that part, but that's largely okay at this point. And we also usually run and are again in the middle of organizing like a respite hub in a nearby building for people who, because it's like it is like a weekend-long affair that has like a week of setup and a week of pull down. So it can get quite noisy, and like a lot of people walking through the park who aren't necessarily particularly mindful of the fact they're walking past people's homes and that sort of stuff. So it kind of gives them a place to go hang out away from the noise that becomes the park for a few weeks.
I would also add to this as well that a lot of this work is only possible off of the back of the street kitchens and the ongoing like long, slow work of community organizing that we've been doing in the park, which often manifests around just holding spaces and creating spaces for. Yeah, you go.
Obviously, like the reason we are like, I guess, entrusted by these people to advocate for them is that we are there every week and have like proven our trustworthiness to these people. So they trust us to go yell at the right politicians for them, and trust that we are going to fight for what is fair for them.
Cool. Any other questions?
I think we're out of time, actually, Caspian. We probably need to wrap up pretty quickly. Yeah.
That's so fair. Okay. Anyone who does have any questions, like I said, feel free to get in contact with us at APN Queensland or at Cuddle. We're so happy to chat and share our knowledge and share our networks. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And before we go, sorry.
I was just going to sign off and just let folks know that in June there'll be the People Against Poverty conference fair, which will be held in Meanjin. So please come along. I think Kristen's just popped something in the chat there. So if you haven't signed up already, please sign up and come along. It'll be held at Griffith University in South Bank, if I'm correct. Yeah, cool. 21st and 22nd, and there'll also be some events as well that we're planning. So stay tuned for those. But I think one of them will be helping out at Mudsgrave as well, or maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and also this week, Anti-Poverty Centre is hosting the Power to Persuade blog, where some folks in poverty have been writing some articles as well. So do that a couple of times a year. It's a social policy blog, so you can check that out too. But I think that was it.
Great.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
See you next time.